Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
My name's Emma. I'm 32 years old, and I've spent most of my life being the shadow of my younger sister, Julia. I don't mean that in the typical sibling rivalry way. Julia wasn't the perfect daughter, but she was always the one people gravitated toward. She had that effortless charm, the one that made her the life of every party. And me? Well, I was the one standing at the back of the room, smiling politely, blending into the background. It's just how it's always been. That day, the day of Julia's wedding, was no different. The venue was gorgeous, a sprawling estate nestled at the edge of a vineyard, decorated in every shade of white and cream you could imagine. Julia was radiant, her dress shimmering as she walked down the aisle, her smile perfect, just like she'd always dreamed of. But I felt like I was drowning in the crowd of impossibly wealthy and influential people who surrounded us. It felt like they could smell the difference between them and me, their polished suits and designer gowns, their expensive shoes clicking across the marble floors. It all made me feel small, invisible almost. It didn't help that I was standing next to Julia's best friend, a woman named Karen, who made small talk with everyone except me. I could feel her eyes flick over me, sizing me up like I didn't belong. I kept my gaze straight ahead, making sure not to draw attention to myself, though it was hard not to notice that the bridesmaid of honor, Julia's best friend since childhood, was waiting for her turn at the microphone. Then, finally, it was time for the speeches. Julia stood up, her eyes scanning the crowd as the guests fell silent. I had no idea what she was going to say, but I was about to find out. She smiled and raised her glass, the microphone in her hand. "Good evening, everyone," she began. "I hope you're all enjoying this special day as much as I am. I just wanted to say a few words about someone who means the world to me, my older sister, Emma." I froze. I didn't know what she was going to say, but the tone in her voice, the way she said my name, made me feel like something was coming that I wasn't ready for. Julia smiled sweetly, a hint of something I couldn't quite place behind her eyes. "Growing up, Emma was always there for me," she started. "She had to deal with so much, watching me get all the attention, watching me get the things she didn't, and while she struggled with her career and, well, everything really, she was always there to support me." There it was. I could feel the eyes of the room shift toward me, and for the first time in my life, I felt exposed. Julia went on, detailing every failure of mine that I could barely face myself, how I had trouble with work, how I'd never been able to hold down a steady job, how my finances had always been a mess. And then she hit me with it. "Emma, you've been a great example of what happens when you don't keep up with the world's expectations of success." Her voice rang out, so calm, so sure. "You see, this is what happens when you don't hustle, when you don't have a backup plan. You're left behind. But I don't want that for you, Emma. I want you to have the life you deserve." I barely registered the words that followed. My eyes were fixed on Julia's face, her flawless smile that, for the first time, didn't feel like it belonged to my sister. It felt like a mask, a performance. The words cut through me, and I couldn't look away. Everyone else in the room listened, nodding sympathetically, their expressions filled with concern for the struggling older sister. They had no idea what she was really saying, how easily she'd thrown me under the bus for the sake of her own image. I fought to keep my composure, the weight of her words suffocating. I could feel the sting of her words burning my cheeks, but I smiled, nodding along as if nothing was wrong. I wasn't going to let her win. I couldn't. And just when I thought I might choke on the reality of what was happening, something unexpected happened. Just as Julia was about to make another comment, the big screen above the ballroom flickered to life. The room was distracted by the sudden change in the air. Breaking news. The room fell into a hush. Everyone turned to look at the large TV screen, a reporter's voice suddenly filling the silence. "Breaking news. Emma Walker, the founder of Quantum Dynamics, has just been revealed as the youngest female billionaire in state history. Her company, which focuses on advanced AI technology, has just been acquired for $4.7 billion. The words hit me like a freight train. The ballroom, so full of judgment just moments ago, fell into stunned silence. I saw Julia's eyes widen, her smile fading as she glanced at me. For a second, I felt a strange satisfaction. I wasn't the failure she made me out to be. I was a success, one she didn't even know about. I kept my eyes steady, my posture relaxed. They didn't know the half of it, and as the attention shifted from Julia's carefully crafted narrative to the shocking truth, I smiled inwardly. It wasn't time for me to speak yet. But soon, It would be. The truth was about to unfold. And this wedding? It wasn't going to end the way Julia had planned. I wasn't just the girl they'd written off. I was the one who would turn the tables on them all. The room was still, stunned, silent. Julia, standing at the podium with her glass in hand, hadn't realized that her carefully curated speech about me was about to be interrupted. The words she had spent weeks rehearsing, the speech that painted me as a cautionary tale, hung in the air like a bad smell. The guests were nodding along with her, their eyes pitying, yet none of them had any idea of the truth behind the woman they were listening to. And then, without warning, the large TV screens mounted around the ballroom flickered to life. The reporter's voice filled the room, catching everyone's attention. A quick switch from the speeches to breaking news. Breaking news. Emma Walker, the CEO of Quantum Dynamics, has just been named the youngest female billionaire in state history. Her company, an AI powerhouse, has been acquired for $4.7 billion by a major tech corporation. The words hit the air like a slap, and I felt the room's energy shift. All eyes, which had been so focused on Julia moments before, were now snapping toward me. The clink of silverware stopped. Whispers began, growing louder as the truth spread across the room. I stood there, my face a mask of composure, while Julia's smile faltered. Her perfect little narrative, the one where I was the failure, the cautionary tale, suddenly crumbled. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction bubble up inside me. "Wait," Julia muttered under her breath, her voice barely audible as she turned to face me. "What is this? What the hell is going on?" I didn't answer her. I didn't need to. The room was buzzing now, like a swarm of bees caught in a storm. There was shock, disbelief, curiosity. The tables had turned in the span of a few seconds, and I was the one in control. A few brave souls from the crowd began clapping. Others, unsure of what to do, just stared, but the energy was unmistakable. A shift had occurred, one that Julia couldn't control. My success, the very thing she'd tried to bury, was now exposed. "Emma," Julia started again, her voice trembling, trying to regain some semblance of control. This is incredible, but I cut her off with a smile, letting the chaos settle into a brief, awkward silence. "Yeah," I said, my voice louder than it needed to be, drawing everyone's attention. "I know, it's incredible. Imagine how much more incredible it feels when people stop assuming the worst about you, when they stop thinking you're just the person who's always been in the background." I could see Julia's face flushing, her smile gone, replaced with something much more vulnerable than I'd ever seen. She was rattled. Good. I took a step forward, the room quiet as I looked out at the people who had once made me feel invisible, irrelevant. The people who, just a moment ago, had been nodding sympathetically at Julia's carefully crafted story. "You all know me as the underdog, the one who never had her life together," I said, addressing the room now, my voice calm and steady. "But here's the reality. While I've been quietly building a business, working every night, and putting my everything into it, some of you have been more concerned with what my life should look like, based on your own limited views of success." I let that hang in the air for a moment. "Thanks for the concern, by the way, Julia. I really appreciate it. I'm sure your wedding, your dress, your party, everything is beautiful, but I don't need it to feel validated. I've got my own life, my own success, and for the first time in a long time, it's all on my terms." Julia's eyes darted around, looking for any kind of support, but I could see the reality settling in for her, and it was too much to bear. She couldn't deflect. Not now. Not after everything had come crashing down. The guests who had once looked at me with sympathy now looked at me with something else. Respect, maybe even awe. They didn't know everything, but they knew enough. And as the realization slowly sunk in, I knew this was my moment. It wasn't just a moment for me to expose the truth about who I was. It was the moment I took back the narrative. No one would ever make me feel small again. As I turned to leave, my hand brushing against the door handle, I shot one last comment over my shoulder, aimed at my sister. "Oh, and Julia, just so you know, the building you're living in," I said with a smile, letting the silence stretch out just enough to make her really feel it. "I own it, so, yeah, it seems I've been the help all along, haven't I?" With that, I left the room. The silence behind me was deafening, but it wasn't my problem anymore. This was my time, and it had only just begun. The silence in the room was deafening after my little bombshell about the building. It was the kind of silence that only comes when people are faced with an undeniable truth. The truth that Julia and my family had spent years ignoring, pretending it didn't exist, pretending I didn't exist as anything other than a distant afterthought. But now, well, now they couldn't hide from it anymore. The truth had been dragged into the spotlight, and I wasn't about to let it slip back into the shadows. I stood near the door for a moment, letting the weight of my words settle over the guests who had been so quick to sympathize with Julia. I could feel their eyes on me, though none of them dared to speak. It was almost as if they were afraid to break the quiet, like it was some fragile thing that would shatter if touched. "Good evening, everyone," I said, my voice smooth and steady as I turned to face the room. "I'd like to say something." The attention was all mine now, as it had always been meant to be. I had the floor, and I wasn't about to waste it. "Julia," I began, glancing at my sister, who was now standing with her back to the crowd, her hands gripping the podium like it might collapse under her. "I'm sure you had good intentions with your speech. After all, you were just trying to inspire everyone with my supposed failures." Julia winced, but I didn't give her time to interrupt. "But let's not forget who made all of this possible," I said, waving a hand around the room to indicate the opulence, the champagne, the laughter, the luxury of this whole event. "You see, while you've been out here presenting yourself as the ideal, the one who's got it all together, there's one person who's quietly kept everything afloat. Me." I let the words hang in the air for a moment. "While you've been busy playing the role of the golden child, I've been building something that, frankly, no one in this room could ever dream of. And all the luxury, all this expensive celebration, it's all been funded, in part, by me." A wave of confusion washed over Julia's face as the guests exchanged glances, murmurs rippling through the crowd. The tension was palpable. "Julia," I continued, my voice growing sharper now, "this wedding, the venue, the catering, the decorations, all funded indirectly by my company, my business empire that you've been so quick to dismiss. This building where you live? That's right, I own it. You're not just standing in a beautiful apartment. You're standing in something that's been made possible by the very work you've chosen to ignore." I felt a flicker of satisfaction as I watched Julia's face pale, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. She had no words now, no rehearsed speech to fall back on. And it wasn't just Julia who was caught in this trap. Marcus, my brother-in-law, who had always looked down on my career as if it were beneath him, looked like he was about to choke on his wine. I locked eyes with him, and he shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly realizing that I knew exactly what he thought of my unimportant business. "See, while you've been busy pretending to be the epitome of success, Julia, I've been quietly building something that's not only worth more than all the showy appearances combined, but that's been keeping this whole circus running." I motioned around the ballroom, "And all the while, I've been the one you've looked down on, the one you've judged." Julia opened her mouth, but no words came out. I didn't let her speak. "Maybe," I said, "you should think a little harder before you make someone the villain of your story. Because for all your talk about success, you failed to see the biggest picture. It's not about the glamour. It's not about the fame. It's about building something that lasts." I took a deep breath, pausing just long enough to see if Julia would finally say something. But her eyes were glued to the floor now, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "Anyway," I continued, walking toward the door, "I think I've made my point. I'm sure you'll all enjoy the rest of the night." And with that, I turned to leave. As I reached for the door handle, I shot one last deliberate glance over my shoulder, offering Julia a final parting shot. "Oh, and Julia? One last thing. Don't worry about your apartment. I'm sure you'll manage without my support." And then, without waiting for her to respond, I walked out. Behind me, the stunned silence of the room lingered. But for me, the noise of the outside world had never sounded sweeter. The following morning, I sat in my office, reviewing the fallout from the previous night. The chaotic whirlwind of the wedding and the explosive reveal of my secret had left my head spinning, but I knew I couldn't afford to let it linger for too long. Interviews were scheduled, and the media wanted answers. Forbes, CNBC, and a dozen other outlets were calling, eager to get their hands on the story of the youngest female billionaire in state history. But first, I had to process everything. The way Julia's face had drained of color when the announcement flashed across the screen. The way the entire ballroom had gone from pitying me to marveling at my success, all in the span of a few seconds. It was surreal. I thought about the path I'd taken to get here, the years of hustle, of sacrifices made in silence, and the nights spent working alone, long after everyone else had given up. I'd built something real, something no one could take away from me. Not Julia, not Marcus, not even my own family. But I had to admit, it felt good to finally be seen for what I was. Not the shadow of Julia's success, but a woman who had created her own empire, and I wasn't done yet. As I scrolled through the texts and emails that had flooded in since the wedding, one message caught my eye. A text from Dr. Sarah Kim, my old professor from college. She'd been one of the few people who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Her message was simple, but it carried weight. I always knew you'd do something amazing. I'm proud of you, Emma. I smiled, feeling a rush of warmth. In a world that had so often ignored me, here was someone who had always seen my potential. She didn't care about the failures or the setbacks, only that I kept moving forward. That message was all the validation I needed. Just as I was about to reply, my assistant, Claire, knocked on the door and entered with a steaming cup of coffee. She looked at me with a raised eyebrow, noticing my pensive mood. "Big day ahead?" she asked. I took the coffee and smiled. "You could say that. Forbes wants an interview, and a few other outlets are calling too. It's going to be a whirlwind." Claire sat down across from me, her gaze soft. "You've earned this, Emma. I just hope you're ready for it." I looked out the window, taking in the view of the city skyline. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. The world knew who I was now, and I wasn't going anywhere. "I'm ready," I said, my voice firm, "but I'm not done yet." I hadn't just built a billion-dollar company. I had set my sights on something bigger, something that would push boundaries in a new field. Aerospace technology. Quantum aerospace was my next venture, and I was already making plans to dive into it headfirst. The coffee was warm in my hands, but the idea of what was to come was even warmer. I was ready to change the world again. Claire looked at me, clearly sensing my determination. "What's next, then?" "A lot of work," I said, my lips curving into a smile. "And I've got a vision to turn this world upside down." Claire nodded. "Well, I'm with you, always." For the first time in years, I wasn't worried about what my family thought. I wasn't worried about whether Julia would ever accept me or if she would ever see me as more than a failure to be pitied. I had done this on my own. I had already won. As I sat back in my chair, my phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from Julia. The words were simple, but the weight of them was unmistakable. "I never meant to hurt you. I was just trying to inspire you. I see that now. I'm sorry." I stared at the message for a long moment. The apology was heartfelt, I could tell, but it was also empty. Julia had never fully understood what she did to me or why I had kept my success hidden for so long. She still saw the world through a narrow lens, her lens. I sighed and put the phone down without responding. It wasn't about her apology, it was about me. I had built something real, and that was all that mattered now. The world was starting to see me for who I really was. And the best part? The journey was just beginning. The next morning, I sat in my office sipping coffee, the quiet hum of the city outside barely breaking the stillness. The glow of the screens and the endless buzz of notifications on my phone couldn't distract me from the events of the previous evening. My mind kept drifting back to the look on Julia's face when the announcement came, her carefully constructed world coming undone in an instant. I hadn't expected it to feel this good, this liberating, but now I had to face the aftermath of it all, and that meant preparing for the inevitable. Julia wasn't going to just let it go. She never did. I'd just finished reading a few emails when there was a knock at the door. "Come in," I called out, not looking up from my screen. The door opened, and Julia stepped into my office. She was wearing a perfectly pressed blouse, her hair neatly styled. She looked the part of someone who had it all together, but I could see the nervous energy radiating from her. The weight of the previous night was clearly still on her. She closed the door behind her, and for a moment, we just stood there in silence, the tension palpable. I need to talk to you," Julia began, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. She hesitated, shifting on her feet, and then walked over to the chair across from me. I raised an eyebrow, still not quite believing that she had the nerve to show up here in my space after everything. But I didn't say anything. I let her speak. "I know I hurt you last night," she said, her eyes darting around the room, not quite meeting mine. That speech, it wasn't meant to be cruel. I thought, she stopped, taking a breath, clearly trying to organize her thoughts. "I thought I was trying to inspire you, to show you what you could be if you just tried harder." I folded my hands in front of me, watching her carefully, my expression unreadable. "You thought?" I echoed. "Inspire me?" You humiliated me in front of all our friends and family, Julia. You used my life as a cautionary tale, as a lesson about what happens when you don't fit into society's narrow idea of success. Julia winced. I didn't mean it that way. I didn't realize. She paused, finally meeting my eyes. I didn't realize how badly it would hurt you. I felt a flicker of something, frustration perhaps, simmering beneath my calm exterior. You didn't realize? You've known me my whole life, Julia. You know what I've been through. And yet you chose to stand there and paint me as someone who's been failing at life for years. She swallowed, the shame in her expression evident. I'm sorry. I was just trying to make the day about something positive. I didn't think it through. I thought if I could talk about how far I've come, it would inspire you to be more like you? I finished for her, my voice tight. Julia flinched. No, not exactly. I mean, yes. I wanted you to see that there's more to life than just struggling. I've worked hard for everything I have. I just thought, maybe you could too. I let her words hang in the air. There it was, the root of the problem. Julia had always believed that the right path was the only path, that her way, her success in the eyes of the world, was the gold standard. And here I was, quietly building an empire, but because it didn't look like her version of success, it was dismissed. Well, Julia, I said slowly, I don't need your inspiration. I've built something meaningful on my own, something real. While you've been following a script your whole life, I've been writing my own. I don't need to be told how to live or how to succeed. I'm already there. Her face faltered for a moment, like she hadn't expected this side of me, the side that wasn't her dutiful, apologetic sister, the one she could manipulate and control. Look, Emma, she said, her voice softening, I didn't mean to make you feel small. I see now that I've been so wrapped up in my own path that I've never really acknowledged yours. You've always done things your way. I didn't get it, but I should have. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but something about her apology didn't sit right with me. It was too late, and I wasn't interested in fixing Julia's insecurities anymore. This wasn't about her. This was about me, my life, my success. Thanks for the apology, I said, my voice steady but firm. But I'm not here to fix you, Julia. You've spent your whole life thinking that following the right path would lead to happiness, but maybe you've missed the point. Maybe it's time you take a risk. Stop trying to control everything. She blinked, clearly taken aback. I don't know how to do that. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. Well, maybe you'll learn one day. But it won't be through me. I've got my own journey now, and I'm done waiting for approval or validation from anyone, not even you. For a moment, Julia didn't say anything. She looked like she wanted to argue, but the words never came. Instead, she slowly nodded, the weight of the conversation settling between us. Finally, after a long pause, Julia spoke again. I know I messed up, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want you to know I'm here. I'll support you, whatever you do from here on out. I'll help if you want me to. I mean it. I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw something different in her. A softness, perhaps a new humility. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was just trying to make things right. I appreciate that, I said, my voice calm. But this is on my terms. No more pretending, no more performing for the family. I've made my way, and if you want to be part of it, you'll have to prove yourself. Not as my sister, but as a professional. Julia nodded, understanding. I get it. She stood up to leave, but paused at the door. I'm proud of you, Emma. I really am. And I'll support you no matter what. I won't be that person again. I smiled, a small but genuine smile. Good. We'll see how that goes. She left quietly, and I sat there for a long while, reflecting on the conversation. It had been uncomfortable, but necessary. The dynamics between us would never be the same again, and maybe that was for the best. The door had closed, but the path forward was clearer than ever. The day after the wedding, the office was buzzing with the aftermath of my revelation. I was fielding interviews left and right, answering questions from reporters who wanted to know how I had kept my success hidden for so long. But the truth was, I had always known this day would come, the day when I could stop hiding and start living my truth. But as the day went on, I received a surprising knock on my office door. Can I come in? Julia's voice filtered through. It was hesitant, quieter than usual. I could hear the vulnerability in her tone, and despite everything, part of me felt a flicker of something. Guilt, maybe? Regret? Or was it just the awkwardness of facing me after everything that had happened? I took a deep breath, forcing a calm expression. Sure, come in. The door creaked open, and there she was. Julia, still looking impeccable as always, but there was something different about her today. Maybe it was the way her shoulders slumped slightly or the way her normally perfect posture seemed a bit off. Whatever it was, I could tell she was rattled. She stepped inside, closed the door behind her, and stood awkwardly by the chair. I, um, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for last night. For everything, she started, looking down at the floor. I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought I was trying to help, to inspire you. But I see now how wrong I was. Her words were soft, but I wasn't sure if they were entirely sincere. I waited, my gaze steady on her. I, I never really understood what you've been doing, Emma. I always thought I had it figured out. I mean, I've been following the right path, doing what everyone expects. But when I think about it now, maybe it's just the safe path, the one everyone else tells you to follow. And I can see now that you've been taking real risks, doing things your own way. Julia hesitated, her eyes flicking nervously between me and the floor. I guess deep down, I was jealous. I envied the freedom you had. You weren't just following a script, like I've been doing. You had the guts to break out and do something different. I let her words hang in the air, and for a moment, I almost felt a pang of sympathy. She was admitting something. She was finally seeing it, seeing what I had known all along. But as much as I wanted to feel for her, I had to remain firm. Jealous? I repeated, my voice even. You were jealous of me? Julia nodded slowly, almost sheepishly. Yes, I see it now. You were willing to take the risks that I was too afraid to take, and it worked. Look at you now. You've built something meaningful, something that matters. And here I was, stuck in this perfect little world I created for myself. I never had to question it. But you saw the bigger picture. I didn't say anything at first. I just let the silence stretch, letting her words sink in. Maybe this was the moment I'd been waiting for, the moment when Julia finally realized that I wasn't some lost cause. But as much as I wanted to feel vindicated, I knew I couldn't fix her. I wasn't her therapist. I was the one who had built something real. And now, she was finally seeing it. Julia, I said calmly, I'm not here to fix you. I didn't build my empire for you to realize what you could have done differently. I did it because I believed in myself when no one else did. I didn't follow a script, and I'm not going to start now. If you want to find your own way, you have to start questioning everything you've been taught to value, and that means stepping out of your comfort zone. She opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand, cutting her off. I've already made my way, Julia, and I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm not going to apologize for finally succeeding. Her shoulders sagged slightly, and for the first time, she didn't look so composed. She looked like she was really listening, really hearing me for the first time. I know. I get it now, Julia said softly. But I'm here. I want to be a part of your success. I want to help. Can you give me the chance to prove that I can contribute in a meaningful way? I leaned back in my chair, studying her for a long moment. I could tell she was sincere, but there was still something in her eyes that didn't sit right. She was offering to help, but did she truly understand the weight of that offer? Or was this just another way for her to try to keep control, to find a way to belong in my world? Help, I asked, raising an eyebrow. You mean work with me on quantum aerospace? You want to be part of my next venture? She nodded eagerly, her face lighting up. Yes, I know I don't have the experience you do, but I have connections. I have the industry knowledge. I can help. I can be a real asset. I looked at her, weighing her offer. Her connections were valid. She had the network in aerospace. I knew that. But I wasn't going to make the mistake of giving her a job just because she was my sister. All right, I said after a pause, my tone firm. You can help, but it won't be on family ties alone. If you want to be a part of this, you're going to have to prove yourself. No special treatment. You'll work just like everyone else, and you'll earn your place. I'm not here to fix you, Julia, but if you want to be a part of this, you have to show me you're serious. Your connections won't cut it alone. Julia blinked, taken aback by my response. But then she nodded slowly. I understand. I will. I'll prove myself. I know I can do it. I didn't say anything for a moment. Just let the gravity of my words sink in. This was a new chapter, a fresh start. And if Julia was willing to work under my terms, maybe, just maybe, we could make it work. All right then, I said, standing up and extending my hand. Let's see what you've got, Julia. You've got a chance. Don't waste it. She reached out and shook my hand, her grip tight with determination. I won't, she said, her voice firm, and just like that, I had set the rules. The next chapter in our relationship, one that would be based on respect and hard work, had begun. The morning after the wedding felt surreal. As the city buzzed outside my office window, I sat at my desk still processing the whirlwind of emotions from the night before. My phone buzzed incessantly with calls, texts, and notifications from media outlets eager to get my side of the story. My name was everywhere now, and I could no longer hide in the shadows. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, a sense of calm washing over me. The truth was out. I was no longer the overlooked sister, the quiet one in the background. I was in control, and it felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I glanced at the calendar on my desk. There was an interview scheduled for later that morning with Forbes. The thought of being on the cover, having my story told to the world, sent a thrill through me. But I knew this wasn't just about the fame. It wasn't about the accolades. This was my moment to show the world that my success wasn't just luck or a fluke. It was the product of years of hard work, of quietly building something real. Claire, my assistant, entered with a coffee in hand. "Big day ahead?" she asked, her smile warm as always. I took the coffee from her, inhaling the familiar scent. "You could say that. Forbes wants the full story, and I think it's time to tell it." I leaned forward, fingers dancing on the keyboard as I typed a quick response to a few messages. The media were already circling, but there was more to do. "You've earned this," Claire said, her voice soft but steady. "You've done more than prove them wrong." I smiled at her, appreciating the support. I haven't just proven them wrong. I've built something that's mine. And now it's time for the world to see it. Just as I spoke, I saw a notification pop up on my phone, a message from Julia. I opened it cautiously, already preparing myself for another half-hearted apology or attempt to spin things in her favor. "I see what you've done. I see the empire you've built. I'm sorry for everything. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I'm here. If you need me, I'll support you. I'm proud of you." I read it twice before I put the phone down. Part of me wanted to dismiss it, to keep holding her at arm's length after everything. But another part of me, the part that had seen the world as it truly was in the last few days, understood that this was a step for her. A tiny one, but it was a step. I glanced back at Claire. Julia texted, "She's trying. I think she's finally starting to get it, but I'm not sure I'm ready to forgive her yet." Claire's expression softened. "Take your time. It's your decision. She's going to have to prove herself, just like everyone else." I nodded, appreciating the truth in her words. Julia was going to have to show me more than just words. The damage had been done, and while I was open to the possibility of reconciliation, I wasn't about to be anyone's safety net again. This time, I was in control. The interview with Forbes started shortly after, and I sat up straighter, mentally preparing myself. This wasn't just an interview. It was my chance to finally tell my story on my terms, to show the world that I was more than just a family member, more than just someone's cautionary tale. I had done the work, and now it was time to make sure the world knew it. The reporter, a woman in her 30s named Rachel, was professional and direct. She didn't waste any time with pleasantries. "Emma, the world's just discovered that you've built one of the most successful AI companies in the country. Quantum Dynamics was acquired for $4.7 billion. But up until now, you've kept this quiet. Why?" I leaned back slightly, taking a moment before answering. Because I didn't need to announce it. I've always believed in the quiet power of doing the work. It's not about the headlines, the parties, or the fame. It's about the impact you make, the way you change things. For years, I worked behind the scenes, and that's exactly how I wanted it. The world would see what I'd built when it was ready, not before. Rachel scribbled notes, clearly impressed with the answer. And now, here you are, on the cover of Forbes magazine. How does it feel? "It feels good," I said, letting a small smile cross my face. "But this is just the beginning. I'm not stopping here. In fact, I've already set my sights on something new." Rachel's eyebrows raised. "What's next for you?" "Aerospace," I said simply. "Quantum aerospace. It's my next big challenge. We're looking to push boundaries in a way no one has before. I'm ready for that challenge." She paused, and for a moment, the room was still. "What do you think has been the key to your success?" I looked out the window, my thoughts briefly drifting to the past. To the years of hard work, the failures, the moments when I almost gave up. I think the key is persistence and vision. It's about seeing what others can't and having the courage to go after it, no matter how difficult it gets. Rachel nodded, her pen poised above her notepad. "And what do you think your family thinks about all this?" I smirked, knowing this was coming. They'll get it eventually, but it's not for me to explain. This is my success, and I'm going to enjoy it on my terms. As the interview wrapped up, I felt a sense of closure. The world was about to see me for who I really was. Not just a woman who'd been overlooked, not just the sister in the shadows, but a leader, a force in my own right. I walked back to my desk, feeling lighter than I had in years. The world was wide open now, and as I looked out over the skyline, I knew that my journey was just beginning. This wasn't about proving anyone wrong anymore. It was about proving to myself that I had always been enough, and now the world was going to see it. The Forbes cover story hit the stands today, and I couldn't help but pause for a moment to let it sink in. There, on the glossy pages, was my face, the face of the youngest female billionaire in the state. The words beside it spoke of the years I'd spent quietly building Quantum Dynamics, the AI company that had gone from a side project to a $4.7 billion acquisition. It was surreal. The world was suddenly paying attention, but the real story wasn't about the flashy headline or the jaw-dropping numbers. The real story was what had happened in the years leading up to this moment. It was about the journey from being the overlooked, underestimated sister to being the one who quietly changed the game, without anyone noticing until now. I leaned back in my office chair, watching the city skyline beyond the window, the world stretching out before me. I could still feel the echoes of last night's events, the wedding, Julia's humbling speech, and the subsequent confrontation. It all felt like a lifetime ago, but the ripples were still present, even now. My phone buzzed on the desk, breaking my thoughts. I picked it up, seeing a message from Julia. "I can't believe how much you've accomplished. I want to be a part of it. I'm committed to supporting you no matter what. Let's do this together." I stared at the message for a long moment. Julia had always been quick with words, but this felt different. The message wasn't about her own agenda anymore. It was about offering her support. She was acknowledging, at least in her own way, that I had built something meaningful, and that she wanted to be part of it. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had spent years building this empire in the shadows, knowing that the day would come when it would all come to light. And now, here I was, on the other side of it, finally seen for who I was, for what I had done. The journey wasn't over, though. I had spent my entire life being told I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't living up to expectations. But in the last 24 hours, everything had changed. I wasn't just the sister who'd been ignored or dismissed. I was the one who had quietly built something the world couldn't ignore anymore. Julia's message was a step, maybe even a breakthrough, but I wasn't ready to fully embrace it yet. The relationship between us could never go back to what it was. She still had her insecurities to work through, her need to reconcile with the fact that I had achieved something on my own, without anyone's approval or help. I smiled to myself, thinking about the future. There was still a long road ahead, with new challenges and opportunities. Quantum aerospace was just the beginning. I had set my sights on even bigger goals, goals that would push the limits of what was possible, in both technology and in my own life. The phone buzzed again, this time a message from Dr. Sarah Kim, my old professor. She had been one of the few people who believed in me when I had doubts about my own abilities. "I knew you were capable of greatness. I'm so proud of you, Emma. Keep pushing the boundaries. You've only just begun." I felt a lump form in my throat. It was a simple message, but it meant the world to me. The people who had believed in me, the people who had seen my potential long before I could, were the ones who had made this journey worth it. I replied to Sarah's message, then sat back in my chair, looking out at the horizon. A sense of peace washed over me, something I hadn't felt in a long time. I had finally found my place, not just in the world, but within myself. I had built something real, and I was no longer hiding in the shadows. A few moments later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Julia's assistant, confirming that she would be starting at Quantum Aerospace in the next few days. I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. It seemed like Julia was serious about this new chapter, one that might not be about family ties, but about real work. I was cautiously optimistic, but I wasn't going to let her slip back into old habits. If she wanted to prove herself, she had to show me she was ready. I set my phone down, feeling a sense of calm I hadn't expected. As much as my family had once defined success by appearances, by money, by status, I was starting to see that true success wasn't just about what you had, it was about what you built, and whether it was meaningful. In the quiet of my office, I reflected on how much had changed in just 24 hours. My world had shifted, and in doing so, so had my family's perception of me. But more importantly, I had finally begun to understand what true success meant for me. And for the first time, I didn't need anyone's approval to keep going. As I stood up from my desk and grabbed my coat, I thought about the next chapter, not just in my business, but in my life. The journey ahead was still unfolding, and I was ready for whatever came next. I was no longer just a shadow. I was the one who had taken control of her own destiny. And the best part? I had only just begun.